"Mr. Davis would like to see you in his office," my assistant Amy said, not meeting my eyes either. Mr. Davis, not Kevin, as I'd called our new CEO for the 6 months since he'd arrived fresh from Harvard Business School with his vision to revitalize our outdated approach. I straightened my tie and headed to the corner office that had belonged to 5 different CEOs during my tenure. I'd outlasted them all. Each had come to rely on my ability to maintain our client relationships, especially with Tech Giant, whose annual contracts kept our lights on and our shareholders happy. "Ethan, come in," Kevin said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Sarah from HR sat quietly in the corner, clutching a folder to her chest. My stomach dropped. "We're restructuring the accounts department," Kevin began, his rehearsed speech flowing with artificial confidence. "Creating a more dynamic team approach to client management rather than the traditional model you've been operating under." I listened silently as 15 years of dedication was dismantled in 3 minutes of corporate doublespeak. Words like package and transition floated through the air while I calculated the mortgage payments remaining on my house. "Your position is being eliminated, effective immediately," he finally said. "And Tech Giant? Westridge Solutions? They specifically requested me as their account manager in our last contract renewal." My voice remained steady despite the rage building inside me. Kevin smiled with unearned confidence. "We've prepared comprehensive transition plans. Our clients understand business decisions. They're loyal to Carson, not to individual employees." An hour later, I stood in my office, placing 15 years of professional life into a cardboard box under Amy's tearful gaze and the watchful eye of a security guard. My diplomas, client appreciation awards, and the photo of me shaking hands with Tech Giant's CEO after securing their first 7-figure contract, all coming down from the walls. "Your personal items will be shipped to you after review," the guard informed me as he escorted me to the elevator, my access badge already deactivated. I walked through the lobby, past colleagues who suddenly found their phones fascinating. Outside, the bright spring afternoon felt like a mockery of my career's unceremonious end. "I'm Ethan Carter, or at least I was Ethan Carter, Senior Account Manager at Carson Marketing Solutions until about 2 hours ago. At 45, I'd spent a third of my life building relationships that generated over 60% of the company's revenue. Not that anyone had mentioned that during my hasty departure. Sitting in my car in the parking garage, I couldn't bring myself to start the engine. 15 years. Over a decade of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and red-eye flights to close deals across 3 continents. I joined Carson when it was struggling, a boutique agency with big ambitions but inconsistent results. Back then, securing Tech Giant felt like landing a whale with a fishing rod. I remember the marathon negotiation sessions, the detailed competitor analysis I'd compiled, the personal connection I'd forged with James Chun, their procurement director, who later became their CEO. "We're going with Carson because of you, Ethan," James had told me after signing that first contract. "Your preparation and attention to detail told us everything we needed to know about how you'd handle our business." That contract had doubled Carson's revenue overnight. Within 3 years, I'd brought in Westridge Solutions, Atlas Financial, and 6 other major accounts. Each relationship carefully cultivated through consistent delivery and midnight phone calls when clients needed urgent changes. When our previous CEO, Margaret Waters, announced her retirement, she'd pulled me aside at her farewell dinner. "They don't understand what makes this place work," she'd whispered, nodding toward the board members clustered at the bar. "They think it's the brand or the pitch decks or the fancy offices. It's you, Ethan. You and the trust you've built." I'd brushed off her concern. After all, I'd survived 4 leadership changes. My client relationships were my insurance policy, or so I'd believed. Kevin Davis had arrived 6 months ago with his MBA playbook and buzzwords about synergy and vertical integration. He'd brought in consultants who conducted time motion studies and created elaborate flowcharts. They'd interviewed me for hours about client management processes, which I now realized was never about improvement. They were extracting my knowledge before showing me the door. I'd built my career on understanding people and anticipating their needs. Yet somehow, I'd missed the signs of my own professional execution being planned in plain sight. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. James Chun, Tech Giant CEO. The call that would change everything. I stared at my phone as James Chen's name flashed on the screen. Ironic timing. The CEO of Tech Giant calling right as I'd been unceremoniously removed from managing their $30 million annual contract. "James," I answered, trying to sound normal. "What can I do for you?" "What the hell is going on over there, Ethan?" His normally measured voice carried an edge I rarely heard. "I just got a bizarre email from someone named Melissa, saying she's taking over our account effective immediately." I closed my eyes, leaning back against the headrest. "I was just going to call you. I've been let go. The new CEO is restructuring the department." The silence that followed felt weighted. James and I had built more than a business relationship over the past decade. We'd celebrated contract renewals over scotch, commiserated over industry challenges, and even attended each other's children's weddings. Without consulting us? His voice had gone dangerously quiet. Our contract specifically names you as our primary contact. We've been clear about this for years. Apparently, they believe clients are loyal to the company, not individuals, I said, echoing Kevin's words without masking my bitterness. That's horseshit and they know it, James snapped. We signed with Carson because of you. We've stayed because of you. That fresh-faced MBA who took over thinks he can just swap people like printer cartridges. I should have felt vindicated by his anger, but mostly I felt tired. They've prepared comprehensive transition plans, I quoted. Well, here's my comprehensive response. If you're out, we're out. Period. My heart skipped. James, that's a $30 million contract. I appreciate the loyalty, but it's not loyalty, it's business, he interrupted. We need someone who understands our needs and has proven they can deliver. That's you, not some random replacement trying to decipher your notes. A thought flickered, dangerous, exhilarating. What if there was another option? I heard myself say, what if you could still work with me, just not through Carson? You starting your own shop? James asked, interest evident. I hadn't considered it until about 10 seconds ago, I admitted. Well, consider it now, he said firmly. Because we have a contract renewal coming up in 60 days, and I'd much rather discuss terms with Ethan Carter Consulting than with whatever's left of Carson. As I finally started my car, I realized Kevin had taken my job, but he'd overlooked my most valuable asset, the relationships I'd spent 15 years building. Relationships that might just follow me out the door. That night, I spread my career across my dining room table, contact lists, performance reviews, copies of major proposals I'd fortunately kept at home. 15 years distilled into paper evidence of my professional worth. My severance package, 6 months' salary, glared at me from HR's letter. Generous by industry standards, insulting given my contributions. My mortgage would survive, but my pride was another matter. I poured a glass of the 18-year scotch I'd been saving for my 20th anniversary at Carson. No point in waiting now. What exactly are you considering, Ethan? I asked my reflection in the window. Starting a business at 45 wasn't part of my life plan. I'd imagined retiring from Carson, perhaps transitioning to a senior advisory role. Now I was contemplating competing against them. I created a spreadsheet, my default response to any crisis. Asset column, deep industry knowledge, proven track record, established relationships with decision makers at over 20 major companies. Liability column, no business infrastructure, limited capital, no employees. The phone call with James had sparked something, but emotion makes for poor business decisions. I needed cold analysis. If Tech Giant followed through on their threat to leave Carson, they would need immediate support. Their operations couldn't pause while they searched for a new agency. They needed continuity, me essentially, but under a different banner. And if Tech Giant would follow me, why not others? I calculated startup costs against potential revenue. With even one major client, I could be profitable within months. With 2, I could hire staff. With 3, I could pose a genuine threat to Carson. Doubt crept in as midnight passed. Was I being impulsive? Vindictive? Was this about business or bruised ego? I closed my eyes, picturing Kevin's smug certainty that clients belonged to Carson, not to me. Then I remembered James's words. If you're out, we're out. By dawn I had a business plan, a company name, Carter Consulting Group, and the calm certainty of someone with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. 3 weeks after my termination, Carter Consulting Group existed beyond just my dining room table. I'd secured a modest office in a co-working space downtown, nothing fancy, but with private meeting rooms that didn't scream startup. My severance became seed capital. I registered the business, created professional branding, and invested in enterprise-grade software systems. Years of watching Carson's unnecessary overhead had taught me exactly what was essential and what was vanity. This looks impressive, remarked my attorney, reviewing my incorporation documents. Most new consultancies take months to get this organized. I've had 15 years to take notes on what works, I replied. The hardest part was drafting my proposal for Tech Giant. I knew their business intimately, but now needed to offer something Carson couldn't. After years of operating within someone else's framework, the freedom was both terrifying and exhilarating. My innovation came from necessity. Without a large staff, I couldn't promise the manpower Carson deployed. Instead, I proposed a model based on outcomes rather than hours, fixed deliverables with success-based compensation rather than retainer billing. This is revolutionary for the industry, James said during our presentation meeting, studying the proposal with raised eyebrows. You're essentially putting your compensation at risk if you don't deliver results. I'm betting on myself, I answered simply. Something Carson was unwilling to do. 2 days later, Tech giant signed a 1-year contract worth $2.8 million, less than they'd paid Carson, but with incentives that could push it higher based on performance. More importantly, it was enough to immediately hire 2 key professionals: Amy, my former assistant who'd been restructured, out of Carson a week after me, and Daniel, a brilliant creative strategist who'd been chafing under Carson's rigid processes. Word traveled fast. Carson's damage control was swift but clumsy, with Kevin Davis personally calling James to express concerns about my ability to service such a large account. He said you were essentially a glorified relationship manager with limited strategic capabilities, James told me with amusement. Said your little venture would collapse within 6 months. What did you tell him? I asked. That we'd reassess in 6 months, James replied. But I also mentioned we'd been unhappy with Carson's strategic capabilities since the day he took over. My first victory wasn't winning Tech Giant's business. It was winning their confidence when I had little more than determination and a laptop. Carson had buildings and staff. I had relationships and results. The market would decide which mattered more. Carson's first official response to losing Tech Giant came via industry gossip. They were streamlining their client portfolio to focus on growth opportunities. The unofficial response arrived when Kevin called me directly. "You've violated non-solicitation agreements," he opened, skipping pleasantries. "I haven't solicited anyone," I replied calmly. "Tech Giant approached me after you removed me from their account without consultation, violating their contract terms. You can't possibly service an account that size properly," he continued. "You're putting their business at risk with this revenge stunt." I let the silence stretch uncomfortably before responding. "Is there something specific you needed, Kevin? I'm preparing for a client meeting." His frustrated sigh was audible. "Be reasonable, Ethan. Come back to Carson. We can discuss a different role, perhaps as a client relations consultant. You'd keep your benefits, pension contributions." "That's generous," I said, "but Carter Consulting is already operational with paying clients." "Client. Singular," he corrected. "And when Tech Giant returns to us in a few months, where will that leave you?" I was saved from responding by Amy signaling me from the doorway. "I need to go. Best of luck with the restructuring." Amy couldn't contain her smile as she entered. "Westridge Solutions is on line 1. Their CMO wants to meet tomorrow." Westridge, Carson's second largest client. I hadn't reached out to them, honoring my ethical boundaries about solicitation. But news travels fast when a $30 million account changes hands. The meeting with Westridge's executive team the following day was enlightening. "We've been frustrated with Carson for months," their CMO explained. "Since you stopped handling our account directly, response times have doubled and the quality of work has suffered." "Carson assigned you someone else?" I asked, genuinely surprised. 3 different account managers in 4 months. The latest one couldn't even recall our previous campaign metrics. 2 weeks later, Westridge signed with Carter Consulting. The exodus accelerated. Atlas Financial called next, then Meridian Technologies. Each had similar stories of deteriorating service at Carson. My phone rang constantly with former clients seeking refuge. Carson's countermeasures grew increasingly desperate. They slashed prices, offered extended payment terms, and finally resorted to spreading rumors about Carter Consulting's financial stability. "They sent us a confidential industry analysis suggesting you're undercapitalized and heading for bankruptcy," laughed the procurement director at Atlas Financial, forwarding me the document. "Pretty desperate move considering we're looking at your actual work every day." By month 3, Carter Consulting had secured 5 major clients, all former Carson accounts, and I'd hired 11 staff, including 4 poached from Carson who approached me after hearing about our growth. Kevin had underestimated the fundamental truth of our business. Clients don't buy services, they buy results delivered by people they trust. Building Carter Consulting meant more than accumulating clients. It required creating the company I'd always wished Carson could be. Each hiring decision became a statement of values. "I don't understand," said Marcus, a brilliant strategist I was interviewing. "You've offered less than Carson would pay. But we offer profit sharing, flexible schedules, and attribution for your ideas," I explained. "No one here takes credit for someone else's work." My leadership philosophy was simple. Hire exceptional people, provide clear expectations, then get out of their way. We established weekly status meetings that focused on client outcomes rather than billable hours. Despite our growth, I faced challenges I'd never anticipated as an employee. The first time payroll came due before a client payment arrived, I remortgaged my house to cover the gap. I didn't sleep for 3 days. "You should have told me," Amy said when she discovered what I'd done. "We all have savings. We believe in what we're building." That vulnerability, admitting I didn't have all the answers, ultimately strengthened our team. When Daniel proposed restructuring our creative process, I supported his experiment despite my reservations. His innovation increased our output quality by 30%. Meanwhile, Carson's tactics grew increasingly aggressive. They filed a frivolous lawsuit claiming intellectual property violations, which was quickly dismissed but generated negative press. Kevin began contacting my clients directly, offering substantial discounts to return. He said, "You've been inflating your performance metrics," Tech Giant's marketing director informed me during our monthly review. Rather than counterattack, I simply opened our reporting dashboard, showing real-time campaign data. Our results speak for themselves. If Carson can deliver better, you should absolutely return to them. The straightforward response strengthened rather than weakened our relationship. Our most challenging moment came when Carson's PR team planted a story questioning our financial stability. 3 prospective clients paused negotiations. "Should we respond publicly?" asked Amy, concerned. "No," I decided. "We'll invite those clients to review our financials privately instead. Transparency, not mudslinging." All 3 signed with us after seeing our books. Our 4th-month revenue exceeded what I'd earned annually at Carson. The company I'd built from humiliation was becoming something I couldn't have created without that very betrayal. 6 months into Carter Consulting's existence, the industry buzzed about Navra, a pharmaceutical giant planning to consolidate their marketing services under one agency. The 3-year contract was valued at over $45 million, larger than any single account I'd managed at Carson. "They've invited us to bid," Amy announced, wide-eyed, holding the RFP like it might shatter. Us, competing against established agencies with hundreds of employees. "Including Carson," Daniel noted, scrolling through his phone. "Industry Forum says they're treating this as a must-win after their recent client retention challenges." The Navra opportunity represented more than revenue. It would establish Carter Consulting as a major industry player rather than a boutique operation built on my personal connections. Our team worked relentlessly on the proposal, leveraging our nimble structure to create a customized approach impossible for larger agencies. While Carson could offer scale, we offered precision. While they promised resources, we promised results. 2 weeks before presentations, I received an unexpected call from Navra's procurement director. "Mr. Carter, we've received some concerning information about your company," she began cautiously. "Carson Marketing has suggested your firm lacks the infrastructure for an account of this magnitude." Rather than becoming defensive, I asked, "Would you be open to visiting our operations before making your decision? See for yourself how we work." The resulting tour became our secret weapon. Navra's team witnessed our collaborative process firsthand, spoke directly with clients, and reviewed our transparent pricing model. The day of final presentations arrived. In the waiting area outside Navra's boardroom, I came face to face with Kevin Davis for the first time since my termination. "Bold move," he said with forced joviality. "Competing against established players." "We believe clients deserve options," I replied simply. Carson's presentation preceded ours, a polished display of capabilities, case studies, and impressive statistics. Our presentation focused instead on Navra's specific challenges and our proposed solutions. 3 days later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Mr. Carter? This is Richard Wells, Navra's CEO. I wanted to personally inform you that after extensive evaluation, we've selected Carter Consulting to handle our consolidated marketing services. In 6 months, we'd gone from a startup born of desperation to winning against the very company that had discarded me as irrelevant." News of the Navra contract transformed Carter Consulting overnight. Industry publications that had ignored us suddenly requested interviews. Competitors who had dismissed us began analyzing our approach. The narrative shifted from Ethan Carter's revenge project to innovative industry disruptor. I declined most interview requests, focusing instead on flawless execution for our growing client base. Revenge makes for interesting headlines, but poor business strategy. At the annual Marketing Excellence Awards, the tension was palpable when our team encountered Carson's executives at the pre-ceremony reception. "Congratulations on the Navra account," said Margaret Waters, Carson's former CEO who had returned as a board member. "I've been following your progress." "Thank you," I replied, genuinely appreciating her acknowledgement. "The board has concerns about our current direction," she confided quietly. "Losing 8 major accounts in 6 months raises questions." I learned later that Carson's board had called an emergency meeting to address their client exodus. Kevin's leadership was under review, with shareholders demanding explanations for the revenue decline. When our paths crossed at industry events, Kevin's demeanor had noticeably changed. Gone was the arrogant dismissiveness, replaced by forced cordiality that barely masked his resentment. "Your success has certainly been unexpected," he offered at a conference where both our companies were presenting. "Though I wonder if it's sustainable without Carson's infrastructure." "We focus on results rather than infrastructure," I replied. Clients seemed to appreciate the difference. The victory that brought me the most satisfaction wasn't winning accounts or seeing Kevin squirm. It was building the culture I'd always envisioned. Our employee retention stood at 100%, unheard of in an industry known for burnout. When tech giant renewed their contract with us at an increased value, James Chen summarized what we'd accomplished. You've proven that relationships and results matter more than size and tradition. That's reshaping how clients view the entire industry. 1 year after being escorted from Carson's building, I stand in our new offices overlooking the city. Carter Consulting now employs 34 professionals, with revenue triple what I managed at my former position. The Linkstar proposal is ready for your review, says Amy, now our operations director. It would be our largest contract yet. The journey from that humiliating walk to my car with a cardboard box to running a thriving agency still feels surreal. Last quarter, we declined more projects than we accepted, a luxury I never imagined possible. Yesterday, a Carson employee applied for a position with us. During the interview, she mentioned that Kevin had been transitioned out after failing to stop the company's decline. The board had finally recognized what we already knew. Leadership requires more than an MBA and confidence. What began as desperate self-preservation has become something extraordinary. When I built Carter Consulting, I wasn't just creating a business. I was creating the environment I'd always wanted to work in. We celebrate expertise rather than undermining it. We build relationships with clients instead of treating them as assets to be managed. The finest irony, I would have remained at Carson until retirement if they hadn't shown me the door. My greatest professional achievement required first experiencing my greatest professional humiliation. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is underestimate your value. It forces you to recognize it yourself.